This is Karen Peterson, and I would like to give you some tips for writing a research proposal. When you see a page number in our textbook, pause the presentation and turn to that page before continuing. Open your textbook to Chapter 11, page 283. Do not write the summary until the whole proposal is written, because you can't correctly summarize what you haven't written yet. Be sure to cover all the major elements of the proposal in the summary. On pages 290 to 291, there is a sample summary for you to look at and review. I recommend you study the marginal notes that are given for the summary, as this will help you write the summary correctly for your own document. The purpose of an introduction is to help the audience understand the context. By context, I mean what is going on, the background of the problem that you are researching. The purpose is also to help the audience understand the scope of work. By this we mean what you will do to complete the research project. And finally, the purpose of the introduction is to help the audience understand the organization of the remaining elements, the elements that follow the introduction in the proposal, to introduce them. I advise you to follow the advice in the guidelines box on page 283 when writing your introduction. In the introduction, you will need to convince your audience that spending money on what you propose to do is smart thinking. This means that you will write an argument, which is also called persuasive writing. In the introduction, your audience will expect to see textual citations that link them to the references page at the end of your proposal. This is for our topic that I give you this piece of advice. The sample proposal in the textbook does not need textual citations and therefore does not have them. Now, people are creatures of both logic and emotion. If you appeal to both logic and emotion, your argument will be persuasive, which means your audience will be more likely to agree with you and think you are smart. And that is a good persona to project in a business setting. By the word logical, I mean you find the best information and facts that you can for the topic you are researching. Find scholarly sources if possible. Scholarly is defined in Chapter 5 of your textbook. By the word emotional, I mean that you present your facts in a way that will shock or stun the reader at some level, if this is possible. You present facts in a way that will evoke, will bring out an emotion in your reader. That will make your reader more likely to agree with you. For our particular project, I've got a couple of examples of a fact that is both logical and would appeal to the emotional side of us. According to the Institute for College Access and Success, please note how I just launched this information by introducing where I got the information from. According to the Institute for College Access and Success, the average student debt for 70% of 2013 graduates is $28,400. And there you see an in-text citation in the MLA format. I have provided you with a link to that source in case you want to go look at it. I recommend that you do. I believe you will want to add this to your introduction. It will be part of the logic and background and emotion that you want to add in. Here's another example of a fact that is both logical and emotional. Once these students graduate, an estimated X%, whatever the amount your sources say, will find themselves deeply in debt and unable to find jobs that provide a living wage or the ability to pay back their loans. And then you're going to want to cite to one of the sources that I gave you in the email. You will want to keep developing your argument with facts like that, again, preferably with as scholarly a source as possible, and also with facts that are likely to have some emotional impact. Pull those from your scholarly sources whenever it is possible. And this is how you persuade your audience to agree that the problem is serious enough to justify spending money to research a solution. I'd like to give you a few tips on citing your sources. Turn to Chapter 2, pages 22 to 24. To be ethical and legal, as in not violate copyright law, you must write in a way that abides by copyright law. To do this, and to avoid plagiarizing, by the way, plagiarism is a violation of copyright law, you must cite to your sources. Turn to page 415 in Part A, Documenting Your Sources. Read pages 415 to 419 very closely. Do not skim these, read them very closely. You will need to do what you are instructed to do in pages 415 to 419. You will need to do that on the proposal. Choose one of the citation styles in our textbook to use to write the proposal. That will be APA, the IEEE, or the MLA. You can find, to help you do your references page, you can find online citation engines, for example, bibme.org. You will still, after using bibme or one of the citation engines, you will still have to use your textbook to correctly cite to your sources within the text of your writing. And that is why you need to read pages 415 to 419, and also to review how you cite to your sources in text in your particular for the particular type of citation that you chose. Now, as far as the proposed program goes, this is another persuasive area, but it's a different kind of persuasion. You're not trying to convince your audience that that they ought to pay money to solve this problem, to do research to solve the problem. But here you are trying to persuade your audience that you know what you're doing, that you know how to find a well-reasoned result. So you're now trying to persuade them that you are worth paying money to. Now you persuade the audience by giving specific details about what you intend to do. I have actually read in student proposals before a student saying, "I will gather data and analyze it, period." This is an absolutely meaningless sentence to your audience. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking, what data? You have told me nothing that I can take away to judge whether or not you are researching this project appropriately. So you must be very specific in the proposed program. In your sample proposal in your textbook, on page 292, you will see that it's called Proposed Tasks. It's the same thing as the proposed program. So you should plan to do the type of research that is appropriate for the issue you are researching. And Chapter 5 will assist you in deciding what types of information are best for your project. Now for our particular project, a bit of history would be helpful to put the problem of recent college graduate unemployment or underemployment in perspective. For example, the amount students are in debt for going to college is increasing while the job availability around the nation is not increasing and the population in the U.S. is growing. These are kind of factors that all swirl into this situation. And so the question that you need to answer and that you then need to write your specific answers to in the proposed program is, where can you find this information? What is the possible future for student graduates? Now, we're concerned with the current crop of students that are not employed, but we're also concerned with the question, is this problem going to be continuing into the future? That makes the problem more important and more severe. And then the question you need to answer and to write into the proposed program is, where can you find this information? And finally, you need to be sure to research what possible solutions are. Now, I've given you a hint here. There are a lot of government websites and books. The more recent a book you have, the better, because the ways that we're networking have changed because we're using Facebook, we're using LinkedIn and online things. So you need to have books that are fairly recent to get all the good data. There's also a lot of articles out there on how graduates can improve their chances of getting hired. You will want to break your proposed program down into tasks. And I've given you an example of some headers that you could use for our particular proposal. And then you will specify the exact research that you will do under each task. I'll let you review that page at your leisure. I'd like to give you a few words about note-taking. And I'm going to quote from Markel here from page 415 in our text. Your note-taking will determine the quality of your finished product. Based on my experience, he is 100% correct on this. One of the main areas where students do not succeed is not reading carefully and taking good notes. Because when you read carefully and take good notes, as I note in the bottom bullet, you have already written some substantial portions of your proposal. And the good news on this is you will be able to reuse those paraphrases and summaries as you write. So good note-taking not only determines the quality of your finished product, it saves time as well and results in a well-written document. Now, one of the main rules for how you write and therefore how you take your notes is don't quote a lot. I'm going to repeat this. Do not quote a lot. I don't want to read a string of quotes loosely linked together by a few sentences of yours. You only quote when the author's voice is important for your reader to hear on the page. And I'd like you to take a look at page 418 for a discussion on this. Your textbook agrees with me. And please be sure to punctuate your quotes correctly. Take the time to learn how to do this. It's not hard. Once you've learned how, it's easy then. Mostly what you will want to do is paraphrase and summarize. To learn how to do this, please review pages 416 to 419 and read this, and for the differences between these ways that we take notes. There are two different skills, paraphrasing and summarizing. Your book gives you a good workup on those. Take the time to look at it. Now I'd like to give you some tips for writing the qualifications and experience. Since you are student interns, you need to be honest about your qualifications and experiences. Your audience will not expect all of you to be subject matter experts. That's fine. However, someone like me, a professional, would definitely want to include quite a bit of background about my qualifications if I were to write a proposal like this. So that's kind of how it works in the real world. Here's some tips for writing the budget section. 1, use a table. I want to see a table. It's just easier to see. The information is quickly accessible. It's going to be worth more to me as an audience or to any busy audience. 2, you're worth $15 an hour. That's what we're going to pay you. So you go ahead and estimate the time it will take you to do your research, to write up the recommendation report, and to write the recommendation report, and then you charge us that amount of money. Now, the scheduling section. Once again, it's very important you create a table or a Gantt chart. You can choose which one. Your textbook shows you samples of both in Chapter 11 over on page 286 to 287. Okay. Take the time to do the graphic correctly and professionally. Remember, review Chapter 8 for how to create a professional looking graphic. You may wish to look at page 295 in our textbook for what the schedule section looks like, how you introduce it, how the table is labeled, and you may just want to copy what you see there. If you don't, you can do something slightly different. Just as long as it's clear and contains the same kinds of information and looks, provides your audience with the same level of detail. Now, in the references section, and you may want to turn to page 295 of our textbook to take a look at this. You can choose APA, the IEEE, or MLA, and once you do this, I want you to stick with the format for all three documents: the proposal, your progress report, and the recommendation report. Closely review the information about textual citations so that what you write in your introduction properly refers the reader to the longer citations in the references section. Okay. The textual, I also call this in text by moment, so if you see me type that in, textual citations means the same as in text citations. The textual citation information is found on the pages that you see here, 420, 429, and 435. Please take the time to study these pages closely so that you may format your textual citations correctly. That's an important thing to do. It's part of the professional image of your proposal. Now, finally, just a little general information on formatting your proposal. Study the sample and format your document so that it looks approximately like that sample. You may want to study the memo header and copy that as well.